The Pentagon this afternoon confirmed 4 Americans, including 2 U.S. troops, are among those killed in a bombing in Syria. ISIS claims responsibility for the attack, but 2 U.S. officials tell CNN there are no current plans to reverse President Trump's decision to begin withdrawing U.S. troops from Syria. Let's bring in our experts and our correspondents to discuss what has happened. And Samantha Vinograd, Republican Senator Lindsey Graham, who's been a very close ally of the president on so many issues, he had this to say about the terrorist bombing in Syria. Listen.
My concern by the statements made by President Trump is that you had set in motion enthusiasm by the enemy we're fighting.
What do you make of his analysis?
Well, Wolf, an ironclad rule in counterterrorism is typically don't accidentally goad the enemy. And in this case, we have a president that has issued statements about ISIS without coordinating with his own team. In my experience, when we'd sit with President Obama in the Situation Room, we'd rely on an intelligence community assessment that clearly laid out the state of an enemy, and we would use that to inform any public talking points that we used to describe what they were doing, because the fear is if you make irresponsible statements that don't have the backing of the intelligence community and that can inadvertently lead them to try to prove you wrong, you risk an escalation of attacks. And keep in mind, during a withdrawal, our forces are under increased risk. This is a high-risk environment, and ISIS is trying to show both potential recruits and the rest of the world that it's still powerful.
Yeah, Nia Malika Henderson, just hours after the attack, the Vice President Mike Pence, he was at the State Department, and he said the caliphate has crumbled and ISIS has been defeated. This is after the attack. This is after the U.S. military announced that Americans had been killed in that attack. What Pence said echoes what the president said last month. Listen to this.
We have won against ISIS. We've beaten them, and we've beaten them badly. We've taken back the land, and now it's time for our troops to come back home.
Sort of the accusation is the administration is tone deaf to what's really going on, not only in Syria, but in Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere.
Right, that this is their essentially mission accomplished moment where the conditions on the ground don't exactly match up with the kind of triumphalism of the Trump administration. What's interesting is that Trump himself is on a different page than some of his advisors. We, of course, saw John Bolton overseas essentially saying they weren't going to withdraw troops right away, that they were it's going to be a condition-based withdrawal, but then the president came back and said that wasn't true, and we can see some of the equipment being at least withdrawn at this point. They have certainly been all over the map. I think you might see the president make the argument that this is why troops should come home, that our boys and girls should come out of that region, that this is somebody else's fight. And there's some people, certainly in his base, people like Rand Paul as well, who actually think the president is right on this. So we'll see what the president's reaction is on this, but you certainly hear from the hawks in his party that this is the kind of thing that they were afraid
Jamie
of.
Gagel, you've been doing a lot of reporting on this. What are you hearing from your sources?
To Nia Malika's point, someone said to me who had been in these White House meetings, Rand Paul is living in Donald Trump's brain rent-free. Mm-hmm. In other words, John Bolton, welcome to his world. Mike Pompeo, welcome to his world. The person who has had a tremendous amount of influence is Rand Paul, who's back at the White House right now meeting, because this is what Donald Trump has always believed. He wants out. Remember what he said about Syria? It's sand and death. I was told first thing this morning, this is going to reinforce his desire to get out now. Yeah,
he wants out. And Rand Paul, he doesn't like to be called an isolationist. He prefers to be called a non-interventionist, but clearly he's got the president's ear on this. But the president, even when he was a private citizen, a long time was very much opposed to U.S. involvement in the Middle East, whether in Syria, Iraq, Afghanistan, and elsewhere. Let's talk a little bit about the confirmation hearings, Laura, that's going on right now for the Attorney General nominee, William Barr. Dianne Feinstein, the top Democrat on the Judiciary Committee, says she's not going to vote for him, his confirmation, unless he's clearer as far as releasing whatever report Mueller comes up with. What are you hearing?
Well, I think lawmakers are breathlessly awaiting this report just as much as everyone else. And the issue is that under the regulations, he doesn't have to, if he's confirmed, Bill Barr, he doesn't have to provide Mueller's confidential report to Congress. All he has to do is say the investigation is over, it's been closed. And so even other Republicans on the committee, it's not just Feinstein, are saying, wait a minute, the public paid for this investigation. We're all entitled to know what's going to happen. And Barr sort of yesterday put out a trial balloon, this idea of Mueller submitting his confidential report and then Barr providing some sort of executive summary to the rest of us. And I think that has not gone over that well on Capitol Hill. But the question is anybody really going to push the point? If he is confirmed, are they willing to subpoena for it? Are they willing to make this a fight that they want to have?
As far as the government shutdown, Nia, is concerned, what do you make of the Speaker's surprise announcement today? She wants the president to either delay or send up in writing his State of the Union address.
Yeah, a real stark reminder of that it's a different Washington, and Nancy Pelosi is in charge at least of the House, and it is her prerogative. She's the one who invites the president there. She, of course, is rescinding that invitation at this point, saying, oh, maybe you just send it in writing. I'm sure that would make for some very interesting reading, but that, of course, is the way it used to be with the State of the Union. What's interesting here is this is why Nancy Pelosi assumed the speakership, right? I mean, she's incredibly powerful. She has a good strategy oftentimes, and she also has the ability to keep her caucus together. That has been one of the most surprising things about this. People often complain about Democrats being off script, being unorganized, and here they have been united behind Nancy Pelosi.
How do you see her strategy?
This is Donald Trump's wake-up call. She did to Donald Trump what is his worst nightmare? Take away his audience. This is like taking away your teenager's cell phone. and I really think she has won round one, because if my math is correct, that letter went to the White House at about 9:30 this morning. It is now 5:30. The White House hasn't responded. The president hasn't tweeted. They're still figuring out how they're going to deal with this.
Because she cited security concerns, Samantha. All of the House, all of the Senate, all of the cabinet, except for one so-called designated survivor, all of the Supreme Court justices, if they want to come, members of the Joint Chiefs, the diplomatic corps, they're all there, and it requires enormous security. During a government shutdown, you shouldn't be doing this.
It requires security both to make sense of the full range of threats that are impacting all those officials that might be coming, and allocating resources to actually physically keep them safe when they're in the room. I do think that we have to keep in mind that President Trump himself often plays the national security card when there are things that he doesn't want to do or that he wants to do. So we have to make sure that anything that we say about actual security risks is tied to conversations with the experts, whether we're Republicans or Democrats.